Welcome to Growth Uncut, a podcast that talks to a range of people from around the world to talk about how we can upgrade justice and achieve Justice 2.0, which is all about how we can create a humane, effective, compassionate, courageous justice system in the future. And I am really, really pleased to introduce Danielle, who's going to talk to us about lots of different things. And I'm going to ask her to introduce herself. And welcome to Growth Uncut, Danielle.
Morning.
Tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So I'm Danielle McKinnon. I'm the founder of Eat Sleep Rise. So we are a rural equine-led charity based in the Scottish Borders, working across South East Scotland and the north of England. We work with young people, communities and organisations using horses, nature and shared leadership to build confidence, connection and real-world skills. For me, I always think our work sits at the intersection of well-being, leadership and social impact. So it's supporting people who are often unheard, whilst also working with systems and organisations or businesses to rethink actually how leadership shows up in practice. I'm an NLP coach. I'm a qualified equine facilitated learning development officer. It's quite a long thing to say. And a work-based assessor. And I run my own leadership business with a team of international coaches after completing a course in North Carolina last year.
Wonderful. What got you into this? It's such an interesting space that you kind of sit in. What got you into it?
Well, for me, and I'll go into my lived experience. So I was brought up in a care system. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was at school. I was put into homeless hostels from the age of 15. And I suppose if we're being really honest here with people, my life took lots of turns. So there was a lot of drug and alcohol addiction when I was 15. There was a lot of street working until the age of 17. And these are the things you just do to survive. But I remember, no matter where I was in my life, I remember being thrown out of school and I got taken to a horse and I'd never ridden a horse. They just caught me up every day. There was something about, they only ask you to be kind. So the only thing I was being asked for was to be empathetic and just to show up and to just be in my body, because the conversation's not through verbal language, it's through body language and emotional cues. And no matter what, and it always sticks in my head. Like I remember being in this hostel and when I think back to my life, when I think back to where I am now, the reason I've sort of been through the trauma-informed approach is because so many things happen to me in systems where you're meant to be safe. I always say it's where the monsters lie. So lots of stories about people in authority that shouldn't be doing things with younger children, well, younger girls. Just inappropriate situations that happened a lot until I was 19 and I kind of found my power. But I really I remember being in this hostel and I was the only one that worked. So I'd get my £120 in my little paper envelope. And I'd get up in the morning and I'd go to work and I'd have to come back every week and I'd have to give them £75 to stay in the shared hostel. And I got no free food. I got no free trips because I worked. So I'd come back and nobody else worked in this hostel at all. And then my first house was Wester Hailes. So Wester Hailes is one of the worst housing estates in Europe at that point. Lots of heroin addiction, lots of crime. You buy a sofa for £2,000 and pay it off for the next 12 years of your life. Pawn whatever you can. All of these things were pushing people to stay in poverty constantly. And I suppose if I hadn't found the horses, if I hadn't found the thing that just gave me hope that I could better myself and do something in this world, I would probably still be in that situation. And I actually mean that.
Yeah. Wow. So horses saved your life. Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful. And I kind of think, and from the sounds of it, you've created a business that is all around horses and how you can bring horses to help other people and save other people's lives, right? Which is just, wonderful. Tell us a bit more about that. Tell us a bit more about the business, a bit more about the leadership stuff. Yeah.
So I think, it's interesting. When I started with the horses, it was very traditional. So I went through my British Horse Society. We did our stable management. We learned what to do to make a horse listen to you. And I remember thinking, God, no one wants to care for a child on their horse. So how am I meant to get to this level? So I've got my level 4 coaching. When I don't have access to the horse, I don't have any money. I'm living in a homeless hostel. I'm still working 3 jobs to pay for my exams. There's caring, nighttime cleaning, pony club. And this went on for years. And I thought, how am I meant to get on that horse? Because when you got to the level I was, you're jumping meter 10 fences. So you have to have this caliber of horse. And I remember doing all these exams when I was in London. I remember moving down south in my 20s. I'd kind of been at a riding school. I'd kind of went through this system of We're going to tell the horse what to do. This is what we're going to put on the horse so it listens. This is the thing that we're going to make it listen to. This is the thing we're going to feed it so it does this. And I thought, what are we actually learning here? Because for me, the greatest gift is what I learned about myself. But I thought, I'm going to have to play this game or I'm never going to get the qualification or I'm never going to get anywhere in my life because at that point I had no school qualification. So I had to get my horse exam to get back into uni in my 30s. So I actually went round Inner Mongolia when I was 20. So I rode a horse round Inner Mongolia and lived with Mongols for months. And that was something I chose to do because I think for me, I didn't have a telly or I didn't have a phone or any of these things. So I used to read so much because I had to get the bus everywhere. So I used to get the bus at 6 in the morning from the hostel. I'd get two buses and I'd walk 2 miles to the stables. I did that till I was 18. And then I started getting freelance jobs. Then I thought, I don't have enough money to do this. So I had to get a catering job and all these other things that happened. And I stopped street working when I was 18 because I realized that that wasn't sustainable because I was like in the middle of the night. And I'm away after I'd been to Mongolia. I thought, right, I'm away. I'm going to go and get my qualifications. So I packed my bag and moved house by megabus when it used to be £7. And I got a job for this quite posh woman. I remember because she used to say to me, can you please put a plaster over your tattoos if I'm taking you places? So for me to go to these places where I had to cover my tattoos, to put my hair in buns, and I never looked like any of the other girls that were there, you know. This was like in the Cotswolds at this point, so lots of money and helicopters and gardens. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do this job. So I went into a training program. I did an apprenticeship when I was 25 and I worked for a huge dealing yard. So I was selling horses. I was working for the Beaufort Hunt. I was freelance riding for the Brazilian Olympic team. I had a really great 5 years. But what I realized was we were still conditioning horses to performance. So everything was based on how high they jumped, what they could get over. And I thought we're still in this system of we're just measuring people by a performance marker that has no real essence. Like
Mm,
for me, I was like, where's the learning? Like that's not learning to say "Oh, you can't get over that thing, so thereby if you're not at that level." So I did the game anyway. I played the game. So I'm playing the game, getting that bit of paper. And then I came home and I set up my own freelance business with the Princess Trust. That was amazing. But it's a really interesting when you think you run away from your demons. This is my early 30s. I'm 41 now. That you think they leave you. They don't ever really leave you. I remember coming back and got myself in a situation and ended up becoming a homeless also at the age of 32 again, in a situation with a man. And then I started to realize, these demons haven't gone. So I might have this bit of paper, but I've still got so much work to do on myself. And that's when the fundamentals of Eat Sleep Rise started to come out. So actually, how can I empower people to have these interactions with horses that isn't performance based?
yeah.
Is that based on interaction and achievement and opportunity and growth? And from that, I started to look at how I could heal myself more. So I did my trauma informed training. I went and did an undergrad in emotional intelligence. I studied NLP a year. I went back and did a uni course. Because I got that bit of paper, I was able to apply to do my equine assisted development coaching, which is level 8. I never thought I'd get an undergrad in my life. I had absolutely nothing. And then from that, I did a course on the principles of team leading. And then I set up the CIC. And
Mm,
then 2 years ago, we transitioned into a charity. And I went to North Carolina and did my leadership coaching. And in that time, we'd also transitioned from when I set up the business, because at this point I was quite into business incubators. So I started my journey with First Sport. And I started with £50 in this little pony that I bought off the internet. I rented this barn. And then 4 years into renting, I thought, God, I'm not really getting to do all the things I want to do. Like, I care about the environment, I care about young people. At this point, I was working with community payback teams. So it's all these unrepresented voices. And I thought, we need a site that envelopes, all of the services. So whether that's gardening, horse care, volunteering, event management. So we took on a landfill site, raised just under 500,000 and set about building our solar powered farm. So now I've got 21 horses, a garden, a polytunnel, 3 chickens, 2 yurts, a tiny house, a coaching space, an event space, and a therapy room. And this has all been user led.
yeah. Wow.
Needs. So yeah, it's been a massive journey and it's not done yet, because the economy is challenging. Underrepresented voices are still not being represented. Money is still not there for people who need it most. And I always say we only have the word rich, so there's poor people, because if you didn't have the word rich, you wouldn't have poor people because there
Yeah.
wouldn't be anything measure it against. So we're still fighting that system. And with what's going on now, I mean, we just distributed £11,000 to families through the Cora Foundation. And, part of the reason we got the funding is I said, I'm not going to give them vouchers. I'm just going to put money straight into people's bank accounts because I don't care what they spend it on. These people are on the breadline. They don't
That's it.
need a voucher. They need someone to believe in them and recognise, because a lot of the families we work with, they wouldn't go for statutory help. They'd be too.
Mm.
But I know, because I take the time to have these conversations, and I notice that's where Eat Sleep Ride is now. And then obviously the herd dynamics business, the leadership, this is something that's been set up mainly to provide another revenue stream that has sort of less work on the horse, raises awareness of what the horses do, so how they help people and what the charity does, but also changes systems. So how can we go into organisations and businesses and understand or try and help them share leadership, and what does that look like?
Yeah, for you, what does that look like? I guess in terms of the current state of play and how we view leadership, if you were thinking about those kind of upgrades specifically with leadership, what would you say? How would we upgrade leadership, do you think? Learning what you've learned and knowing what you know?
So I think, for us, upgrades aren't physical. They're about creating environments where people, and for us, animals, can actually feel safe enough to engage in. And we talk about a lot about shared leadership, but what that actually requires is environments where regulation is possible. So when I look at upgrades, eat, sleep, ride, we're not just talking about buildings. We're talking about conditions for safety, dignity, and participation. If I was to put that into how that looks, warm, dry, welcoming spaces, access to basic needs, having a cup of tea. Is there a shower there? If you can't have one, we've got one in our tiny house. Nature-based, low-pressure environments, because, if someone is cold or overwhelmed or dysregulated, they can't collaborate.
No.
So the infrastructure is the leadership model in action.
Yeah. And it really resonates. I think as you know, I work a lot in prisons, and I think something about prisons are quite so oppressive just by their very nature. And so when we're asking people to regulate and feel safe, like you say, it's almost it doesn't work with one another. It doesn't sit together. And so when we take people out of the prison, and like you say, in nature, we do a lot of nature stuff with our work as well. It's just amazing how that lifts people and how that creates a bit more space and a bit more peace. But then they just get chucked straight back in, right, into this space, which is difficult and quite traumatic.
Yeah, and because for me, an environment is not neutral. Like shared leadership is not only shaped by behaviour; it's shaped by environments. If you think of prison, cold
Mm.
spaces, lack of privacy, kind of absence of basic facilities sometimes, or rest areas that don't offer comfort. So these constantly affect these people's systems. And the nervous system regulation determines where collaboration is possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So something for you about creating more shared leadership spaces, the spaces that are more psychologically safe, allow people to connect, allow people to deregulate. Wonderful. Is there anything else? Anything else that you would see as an upgrade? Looking at what you see, I guess, are some of those maybe Justice 1.0 things, those problems that you see in practice.
100%. So I think, regulated environments, sports regulated people are capable of shared leadership. So if we can support regulation either within the system, and for you guys, you're creating that outside of the system. But like you say, when you put people back in, we go back to this challenge, don't we? But in this sense, infrastructure is not really separate from leadership. It's a direct expression of it. So I think it's the terminology when we're speaking to statutory provision, isn't it? To try and help them understand that we're not taking away people's basic rights and their dignity. We're empowering them to be leaders in their own life. But you have to create the space to do so. And that's a huge upgrade. I mean, the justice system's so massive, isn't it? But I think, shared leadership's not a concept, it's a practice, isn't it? And it shows up in how we respond when something says no. So we have the same challenges when we're working with statutory provision. I'll work with young people who might have 10 social workers in a year.
Mm.
And you think we're not embodying that in the systems that are there to help. And for us, we work with many younger people. So already at that age, if someone's challenging, when they're working with these provisions, they're learning how to respond. And it shows up in the structure of the organizations that I think are failing the people that we are both working with. And it shows up in the environments they're creating. So I think if we want collaboration, we must build for it. I think,
And intentionally, right? I think there's something about waiting for people to come to us and
yeah,
saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm willing to collaborate, but only if someone comes to me." I think there's just something about engineering that door and opening it, isn't it? And saying, we openly want to do that, and I want to collaborate with you." I met up with a guy at the ICPA last year at a conference, and he was just like, "Next year, I want to collaborate. And I was like, let's do that. Let's make that a goal. And I think that's the kind of stuff that's really important. So something out there, I guess, listeners, in terms of if you want to collaborate, open that door, get out there and talk to the people that you connect with, isn't it? It's your tribe.
And it's like, we are currently, it's a good example of a project of collaboration. So we got some funding from the Youth Art Links Fund. And I said, okay, so I'm going to take this money and we're going to run a series of free family events accessible to anyone. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter if you've got 10 children, you've got 10 dogs, you've wandered out, it does not matter because we work with a lot of international visitors as well. So we have our World Organic Organisation of Farming on site. We have international volunteers every week. And the whole point of it was to create a series of creative workshops that were absolutely free and the catering was free. So we have got coming up at Eat Sleep Ride, for example, spray painting, horse wind chime making, botanical leaf printing, football, pine bath, foraging and bushcraft, and every single session is free. But what we have done is we have reached out to local businesses that we know are either single parents, they're working in the same field as we are, which is collaboration, community representation of certain groups. And then from that, essentially we're employing them to come in and run a workshop. We're saying, what's your fee? What are you going to do? We'll support you with the space, the food and the volunteers. We'll bring the people to you. But actually, you tell us what you do. So you bring your work to us. We'll showcase your work. And in that, we'll collaborate what our work does too. And I think that's a good example of how funding can be used effectively. So it's not that we're fighting for a pot. Because actually what that then does is then if these people or, these businesses get funding and they have a conversation, they might say, oh, actually, we know a really great place where we can do this. Or we know somewhere you can go if you want to volunteer. Oh, I met this really good person at this event and she does some trauma counselling or Reiki. So here's an in. So it's creating these spaces where people of that, I suppose, of like-minded behaviours and attitudes are coming together. And just another point on that, I mean, I was met with my friends on Sunday, not to do with work, but we went for a sauna, we went for breakfast at this really lovely little arts fair. And actually, I just started talking and I met this amazing woman who she freezes moss and resin and then she teaches people how to make necklaces. So I took her business card and I sent her an email. And I thought, by the way, that's really interesting if I ever have an environmental theme. But by the way, if you ever want to come to the site and use some of my vegetables or my moss or whatever, and you want
Yeah.
to turn them into resin, do so. But actually, I'd really like to keep your number because that might be something super interesting that someone might go, oh God, I'm really creative. I could start doing things like this. I think it's you as a person have to act out what you believe in, don't you? Whether it's professionally or personally, if you want to embody that, you have to live it each day.
And in terms of, I guess, we kind of do a call to action at the end of our kind of podcasts in terms of what do you need help with? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to share? What would you encourage people to do? What would be your call to action?
I think for us, we want to, through Eat Sleep Ride and through Herd Dynamics, which is our leadership program, we are continuing to explore what leadership looks like when nervous system awareness, community, and structure are brought together. And it's not just as a theory, it's lived experience. And my call to action for that point would be if you go somewhere, have that open mind of, oh, how might I have a conversation with this person? Is it I'm just interested in what they do? Or actually, is there something that could benefit someone else in the community? Could it benefit my own organization? Could it benefit myself personally? And if you're interested in experiencing this work or collaborating or supporting the development of spaces that enable real shared leadership, I'd love to connect with the listeners. I'd love to connect with other businesses out there if they have any ideas. And I understand from having a conversation this morning that there's lots of resources online from yourself that people can actually go and look these things up. How do we start to have these conversations? How do we write these letters? And that's all we're asking for is people to start to think about how do they embody the practice of shared leadership and actually be open to collaboration because that's how we start to share.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Absolutely love that. And, it's really inspiring listening to all the things that you've achieved and all the things that you've done. But like you say, it's about building that system, isn't it? It's about building that system and those habits of connection and seeing people and hearing people, but also just listening to the things that you've overcome. Your resilience muscle is pretty strong from the sounds of it. And I guess there's something for me, and your level of hope inspires me, and it makes me want to keep going. Do you know what I mean? Because you've been through all of those things and you're still going, and that determination is infectious, right? But I guess in terms of the thing that's kept you going, and sometimes in terms of some of the real kind of dark, challenging times you've had, just for those that are listening and thinking, do you know what, I'm in that dark place or I'm in that challenge. Is there any advice you would give them?
I think for me, I recognised for a long time that I don't have family. So traditional, your mum and your dad, they're not there. And I held a chip on my shoulder for a long time. So I think to how I behave now, even in this conversation, and how calm I am, this has taken years, by the way, so I can assure you. And I think, getting my ADHD diagnosis, but I think there was really stepping into my darkness. So what am I learning in my ugliness? Okay, I'm pissed off at the world. I'm pissed off these things should happen to me. I should have been protected as a child. So many things shouldn't have happened to me when I think back now. Let me think back to the challenges and systems. I remember being very young and I was pregnant very young. There's no support there. Someone in the hospital should have helped me. They should have said, "Why are you? Where's the dad and what's happened to you?" No one asked me that
Mm,
question. So I think at some point we have to stop blaming it because it's not going to fix us. But actually, we as people can, and we
mm,
have a bigger voice and more to offer than any bit of paper that someone says about you. And for me, changing my attitude. So, when I was in Wester Hales, I mean, my friend used to call me Danny from the block. My friends are all quite middle class because I met them through horses. And one of my best friends, and I'd be dead without her, to be honest, at 14 took me under her wing. And she said, "I like you." I said, "Do you?" I said, "God, we're so different. You live in a fancy house and I'm out at the weekends with people stabbing each other and throwing blocks on each other and kids' houses." She went, "No, you've got something about you." So I found that thing where I could create relationships with people that were based on real love and connection. And that was the horse for me. But for
mm,
someone else, it might be boxing or yoga. I don't know. But you will create these relationships that will take you away from the environment that you're in that is
mm.
not helping. It's not hating you. It's just giving you more of a block on your shoulder, more of a stigma, which makes you angry when you have conversations. Then you start to rationalize the unfairness. But it is unfair. I can't rationalize that. It shouldn't have happened. But it doesn't serve me bringing it into my everyday life.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your passion and for all the work you do. Your service is just incredible. I really hope I'm going to open that door and I'm going to say one day I'd love to collaborate with you. And we're doing a lot of leadership stuff at the moment, and I would love to talk about that. And yeah, I believe we're just going to stay connected either way. So yeah, anything we can do to help and support and just literally shine a light on the wonderful work you're doing. Um, what I really took away from our conversation, both before and now, is just anyone can do stuff, right? Anyone can be kind, anyone can be human, anyone can be curious.
yeah,
And if we all just do that a little bit more each day, the world will be a more courageous and trusting and compassionate place. So thank you so much, Danielle. Thank you so much, listeners. We care deeply for you and hope you're having a really great day. And I hope this has just given you a little ounce of inspiration and a little bit more hope to keep going as we upgrade the system, and we do that. Let's not wait for it, because I don't think the cavalry's coming.
we are the cowboys.
We're the cavalry, yeah, we're on our horses in a very ethical way. Yeah, take care. Thanks so much, Danielle. Thank you. Bye,
Nobody's.
everyone.